Welcome back, and you're watching Commodity Champions. We've spoken about crude, but we will shift our focus now to sugar and ethanol, which also seem to be in a sweet spot with consumption in India and outside. We are now looking at consumption per capita in the Indian markets also on a rise, breaching the 19 kg per annum mark. This is slightly below the world average of 21.8 kgs. However, it's not just India. Globally, it's going to be a second straight year of recovery in consumption. Moreover, the world production is set to rise, with output from India, Thailand and the European Union likely to be on the higher side, offsetting any significant declines in China and Brazil. Meanwhile, volatility in the energy space continues to weigh on ethanol. So what does all of this mean for the sector? Joining me now to take this discussion forward is Gurudev Gill from Agri options broker at Marex. Hi, Dave. It's been a very volatile agri and non-agri space, really. And we were just talking about the energy concerns that we are looking at, not just in Europe, but in China as well. How has all of that impacted ethanol as a sector?
Yes, certainly. If we look at the macroeconomic space, specifically crude oil, obviously very timely given the segment just before me, we've seen a real adjustment in terms of expectation of global crude oil prices, and that continues to take place for this year and next year. Obviously, we've got OPEC, who will provide us some updated S&Ds in terms of the global balances today. But ultimately, all of this has sort of weighed on ethanol prices in Brazil, which have in some ways been a drag on the global sugar price. One thing we would caveat, though, in all of this is, whilst it's changed or been a drag for the world benchmark price, it really is quite immaterial for the Brazilian sugar production, because we have really been working on an assumption of max sugar flexibility or focus on sugar production away from ethanol. But if we do look at the benchmark figure and the parities, on the one hand, we have in Brazil sub 14 cents as the ethanol parity, and yet the Indian break-even for sugar exports is above 19 cents, subject to EROs being issued by the Indian government for the next crop. In the meantime, domestically in India, ethanol prices are sturdy, and we expect that the ethanol diversion, i.e. the amount of sucrose that is diverted to produce ethanol, moves from 3 million tons in the campaign just ended to 4.5 million tons in the one that will begin.
So, Dave, looking at the prices, then, I mean, as you explained in detail there, what is the sense that the markets can make? Because last year, clearly, India has seen an all-time highs in sense of exports. This year, at 80 lakh tons, clearly quite below on what we did in the last year. But are the prices going to be supportive?
Yeah, I think, India, for our perspective at least, is going to supply a lot less sugar to the world market. So the market looks at 8 million tons as an expectation, with potentially the government coming out later this month to itemize that, and that could come in 2 different tranches as well. But essentially, it's more than that, would reflect more than 3 million tons less than last year. And again, that sugar really, basis where domestic prices in India are at the moment, shouldn't really flow out below 19 cents. So that, in essence, should keep world sugar prices supported to some degree. Meanwhile, consumption, as you've alluded to, in India has bounced back. We assume, I mean, ISMA yesterday had an increased markup in consumption. We can believe that will continue to be the case, where we'll see consumption up to about 27.5 million tons. And again, that means that the dynamics for the domestic economy, or the domestic markets for sugar within India, remain balanced and firm, whilst the ethanol demand is also fairly steady. Incentives very compelling for Indian producers, and therefore year on year the increased diversion from sugar production to ethanol will continue to take place to the tune of 1.5 million tons off over the crop that's just finished. So I think we will continue to see a continuation in this move to produce more and more ethanol amongst Indian producers.
All right, fair point. Yes, there's a lot of rush and a lot of incentives to produce more ethanol. There it is, something that you can do year round, as well as we already have witnessed in the last couple of years. But Dev, let me come back to Indian consumption then, and the numbers that I was looking at 19 plus per person per kg per annum. How do you read those numbers? Are the global consumption numbers, have they also shown a growth?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we've seen some benefit. Obviously, all these year-on-year figures are all afflicted by the reduced out-of-home consumption due to COVID cascading into 2021. We do believe that it will continue. Obviously, a lot of that's fed into the Indian statistics because India is a robust economy, and that trickles into all different parts of the demographics and the consumers across India. So that's part of it. We do see it continuing as India remains a powerhouse of the world. In other parts of the world, absolutely same thing. So yesterday, again, Thailand, year-on-year, August domestic consumption up 8.6%. That again is massively powered by improvements in consumption due to Thailand being suffering from lack of tourism and heavy lockdowns this time last year. But we do see it continuing. Globally, though, more modest. So we pencil in 1% annual consumption growth, which is around 2 million tons. So that reflects partly the fact that not all economies were impacted so much by the impacts of COVID, but also the fact that not all the economies are growing so quickly, and we do have question marks over the consumer discretionary spending out of home going forward in this potentially recessionary period in the UK and the EU, for instance, going into Q3 and Q4 of this year. So a little bit more modest in the non-emerging market countries.
All right, so we're going to be eating more sugar, and so is much of Asia doing that as well. Dev, as always, thank you so much for joining us. So 1% of global demand growth in sugar, which is 2 million, but a much higher number when you look at the emerging countries, and especially India, where we are looking at almost record consumption in case of sugar in this current season. But with that, that's all the time that we have on this edition of Commodity Champions. Thank you for watching.